The Free Thinker Show. Ignite your mind, challenge the norm.
All right, so check this out. Today we are doing a deep dive on this guy, Jack Smith.
Jack Smith, okay.
And he's not just like every other entrepreneur story you hear.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he made a bunch of money, but he sold his company for $800 million when he was 29.
Wow.
But he's out there doing his own thing, like $800 million, and it's like, whatever. We're breaking down this interview he did on My First Million. You know that YouTube channel with Sam Parr and Sean Puri?
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting conversation. Have you ever heard of Jack Smith?
I haven't, no.
So we're going to learn about him together then.
Cool.
It's wild. This guy's like the anti-hustle entrepreneur.
Really?
Yeah, he calls himself a human procrastinator. He's like, I am a procrastinator.
Interesting. How did he get it all done?
I don't know. Well, that's what's so fascinating is that he still managed to build and sell this company for hundreds of millions of dollars.
Okay. So there's hope for the rest of us.
Right.
Yeah.
It really throws the whole, like, you have to be, this hyper-optimized entrepreneur out the window.
Right.
Like, there are other paths, and he's proof.
Yeah, he found a different way. That's pretty cool.
So his company was called Fungal.
Fungal.
And it was a mobile ad network.
Okay.
Like back in the day when you just get those banner ads.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But here's the thing. He basically convinced these developers to buy into his vision of video ads, like before he even built the platform.
Wow.
So he was selling the vision, not even a product yet.
Huh.
And I think that's like a huge takeaway because you can have the greatest product in the world.
Right.
But if you can't sell the vision.
Nobody's going to get on board.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
like, hey, imagine watching a quick video ad between levels of Angry Birds.
Right.
And suddenly you've got, millions of dollars in funding because everyone's like, I get it. I see it. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I see that. I could see that happening. And this is before TikTok ads and all that, right?
Yeah, this is early days. And it's interesting you say that because we'll get to that later about how timing is so important.
Right.
But, this whole selling the vision thing got him into some hot water.
Yeah.
Because he's also got this thing about maximizing value in all areas of his life. Like he had this whole thing with Bonobos, the clothing company.
Right.
Where he had this system.
Interesting. What was he doing?
Okay. So first of all, we have to talk about his Amazon spreadsheet.
Amazon spreadsheet. Okay.
So this guy had a spreadsheet where he tracked and ranked everything on Amazon, from chocolate to baby products.
Wow.
Dude was obsessed.
This guy's next level.
I know.
Okay, so he had a system for bonobos.
Yes. So he was buying all these clothes at Bonobos.
Okay.
But then he realized that if he returned them and then bought them again on sale, he could basically refresh his wardrobe for free every year.
Wow.
So he's thinking about maximizing value even with his clothes.
Interesting. I wonder if Bonobos knows about this.
I mean, I'm sure they do now. But it's just so interesting. Like, he thinks differently.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting. So he sells Fungal, right? Makes a ton of money.
Right.
What do you think he does next?
Starts another company.
That's what I would think, right? But no.
Really?
He's like, I don't want to just start another company. I want to do something meaningful.
Interesting. So what is meaningful to Jack Smith?
Well, he had this idea for a digital detox center in Portugal.
Okay.
Which I think is kind of a common thing.
Yeah.
Once you have all this money.
You're like, now what?
Yeah, like, what do I do with my life?
Right.
And so he's really interested in that. And then he also has all these other, like, unusual hobbies. He's part of a prison pen pal program.
Wow.
And, like, this is before it was cool.
Okay.
And he does these silent retreats in Bali, exploring psychedelics.
This guy's all over the place.
I know. He's like this walking example of someone who just does not care what other people think.
He's living his truth. I like it.
And it's refreshing.
It is.
In a world where we're constantly told to, fit in and follow the rules.
Right.
It's like, nah, I'm good.
I'm going to make my own path.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how does he find these business ideas then? Because he clearly thinks differently.
So he has this thing, he calls it looking for non-obvious barriers to entry.
Non-obvious barriers to entry. What does that even mean?
Okay, so imagine everyone's trying to break down this wall, right?
Okay.
He's like, I'm going to look for the side door.
Interesting.
Like when he launched Fungal's video ad platform, back then, recording your iPhone screen, like it wasn't a standard feature.
Right.
And everyone else is like, oh, we can't do video ads because you can't record the screen.
Right.
He's like, hold my beer. And he found a way to hack it.
boy.
giving him this massive advantage.
Wow. So he finds a way to circumvent those barriers to entry.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
So he's always looking for those things that other people are like, oh, we can't do that. He's like, challenge accepted.
Interesting. So he's a bit of a contrarian then, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of contrarian, we have to talk about his belief in the law of attraction.
Okay, so we're getting a little woo-woo here.
A little bit, but the way he talks about it, it's not just wishing things into existence, you know?
Okay, so it's not just about, like, putting it out there into the universe.
No, it's more about understanding that your mindset influences your actions, which then shapes your reality.
Okay.
So it's about creating this like self-fulfilling prophecy, but in a positive way.
Looks like a feedback loop.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he has this great story about his roommate who was trying to raise funds for his startup. And the roommate was convinced that no one would take him seriously because he was young and inexperienced.
Right. A lot of people feel that way.
And Jack's like, dude, you're already defeating yourself before you even start.
Yeah.
And because Jack, even with very little experience, he had this confidence about him. And so he would go into these investor meetings and they'd be like, so how's the fundraising going? And he'd be like, oh, it's going amazingly.
Wow. Even if it wasn't.
Even if they didn't have a single dollar yet.
That's ballsy.
But that's the thing, right? He believed it.
Right.
And so because he believed it, it made other people believe it.
And became true. The law of attraction in action.
And it became true. He willed it into existence.
Basically.
It's like, wow.
Right.
You could see how some people would be like, this guy's nuts.
Totally.
But then you see the results and you're like,
Okay, maybe there's something to it.
yeah, exactly. It makes you think. It's like Tony Robbins says, you have to name your dog.
Name your dog.
Okay.
Like, figure out that most powerful version of yourself and then step into that role.
Yeah, like, who do I want to be? Okay, I'm going to be that person.
Exactly.
Fake it till you make it. Kind of.
Way. But let's get back to Jack. Because if you thought his business style was different, just wait till you hear about his parenting choices.
Yeah. Starting with the name Baby.
The name Baby.
Baby.
His kid's name is Baby.
Yeah, so his daughter,
Okay.
for the first year of her life, her name was Baby.
Wow.
And, you know, some people might hear that and think,
It's a little out there.
Yeah.
A little different.
but it actually reflects a much deeper philosophy that he has.
Okay, what's the philosophy?
So he believes in questioning assumptions,
Okay.
challenging traditions,
Okay.
and ultimately, you know, making your own path.
Okay, so Baby is just the beginning.
Baby's just the tip of the iceberg,
Wow.
right? Like, this is the guy who, you know, hacked an iPhone before jailbreaking was even a thing.
Right.
So this is just how he operates.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to hear about this naming ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
So they named her, they gave her like an actual name, right?
Yeah, so after getting to know their daughter for a year, they had a naming ceremony.
Okay.
But it wasn't like a typical party or anything. They
Right.
laid out all these different items that represented different paths in life. Like, you know, a stethoscope, a law book,
Yeah.
things like that. And they let their daughter kind of crawl to whatever she was drawn to.
I see.
So it's really about giving her the space to kind of show her own interests.
It's like that scene in Indiana Jones
Exactly.
where he's got to choose the cup.
Yes.
And it's like, you don't know what you're going to get,
Right.
but you're letting fate decide in a way.
Yeah, and I think it's just a really beautiful way to think about, like, how do we set our kids up for success, but also honor their individuality?
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of choices, you know, Jack's got some strong opinions on education too.
Okay.
Like, he doesn't even plan on sending his daughter to like regular school.
Wow. Unschooling.
Unschooling.
Wow.
Had you heard of that before?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of it, but it's definitely not.
Not mainstream.
Not mainstream, no.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, explain what unschooling is.
Yeah, so it's essentially a child-led approach to education where learning is driven by the child's curiosity, by their interests, and it really emphasizes real-world experiences rather than, like, a set curriculum.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster for me.
Right, well, that's the thing. It's definitely not for every kid
Or every parent.
or every parent. That's true, too. You got to be pretty hands-on.
Yeah.
But when it works, it's pretty amazing because
wow.
these kids are like so curious and passionate because they're learning about things that they want to learn about.
It's like that story he told about like this unschooled teenager who's like running his own business and learning about like complicated financial stuff just because he's doing it.
Exactly.
And it's like, meanwhile, I'm over here memorizing the Pythagorean theorem and I've never used it once in my life.
Right.
It really makes you think about the purpose of education, right? Like, are we just trying to churn out good test takers?
Right.
Or are we trying to raise like well-rounded individuals who actually enjoy learning.
Right, who are adaptable.
Exactly. But let's play devil's advocate for a second. What if his daughter wants to be a doctor?
Right.
What if she wants to be a lawyer?
You need certain qualifications.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, I'm unschooled, hire me.
Right. So how does that work?
So that's a question a lot of people have about unschooling. And, Jack's approach is, well, very Jack.
Okay.
He's open to his daughter going to a more traditional school later on if that's what she wants.
Okay.
It's not about being against the system. It's about finding what works best.
Right.
And, he's got this huge network of people. He's already thinking about, leveraging that to create these really unique learning experiences for her, even if it's just, asking people on Twitter to give, a one-off class.
I love that.
I know, right?
It's like crowdsourcing your education.
It's amazing. He said he would teach a business class to a bunch of 10-year-olds tomorrow if somebody asked.
See, and that's what I love about him. He doesn't just talk about these things.
He does them.
He actually finds ways to do it.
He's a doer.
Yeah, and it's not always these big, grand gestures either. Remember that story he told about his daughter waking up in the middle of the night?
The night nanny?
Yes, the digital night nanny.
That's amazing.
So tell everybody about that, because I just thought that was the most Jack Smith thing ever.
Okay, so he basically hired a virtual assistant in India
Okay.
to watch his baby monitor overnight.
Okay.
And if the baby cried for more than 7 minutes straight,
7 minutes?
then the virtual assistant would call him.
Okay.
Otherwise, he could sleep soundly knowing that somebody was there.
He's got a system for everything.
He really does.
I love it.
It's amazing. And he's sleeping better than ever.
Of course he is. He's probably getting a solid 8 hours.
Right.
This is great. Okay, we've covered so much ground, but we've only scratched the surface of Jack Smith. There's one last thing I have to ask you about.
What's that?
The buckwheat pillow. You have to tell me about the buckwheat pillow.
The buckwheat pillow. Okay, so it seems like a small detail,
Yeah.
but it says so much about his approach to life. He's always looking for those small, often overlooked things that can make a really big difference in how much you enjoy your day-to-day life.
Right. It's like those little quality of life upgrades.
Exactly. And he doesn't just buy the first one he sees. This guy researches, he tests, he experiments.
Of course he does.
I mean, we're talking about the guy who had a spreadsheet for the best chocolate on Amazon, remember?
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
he's doing this with everything.
Oh, yeah. Everything, baby formula, strollers, you name it, he's researched it.
I believe it.
And the buckwheat pillow is just a perfect example. He's not content with just a good night's sleep. He wants the best night's sleep.
Optimized sleep.
Exactly. And he's constantly tweaking and experimenting. I mean, this guy's got routines for everything.
Right.
All in the name of optimization.
And you know what?
Sure.
It's kind of inspiring.
It is. It's he just approaches everything with this childlike curiosity.
Totally. It's never too late to learn something new.
And it's not just about acquiring knowledge for the sake of it. It's
Right.
about using that knowledge to make your life and the lives of others better.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all learn from Jack Smith.
Absolutely. So to wrap things up, what are some key takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, first of all, I think Jack's story really challenges the whole one-size-fits-all approach to success.
Right. You don't have to be the hyper-productive, always-on entrepreneur to achieve incredible things.
Exactly. And in fact, sometimes embracing your own unique quirks and perspectives can be your biggest asset.
Totally. It's like those non-obvious barriers to entry he talked about.
Right.
Sometimes the biggest opportunities are hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to come along and see them with fresh eyes.
I love that. It's like he's playing a different game.
Exactly. And speaking of playing a different game, we have to talk about his belief in the law of attraction.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
It's not about magic or anything like that.
Right. It's about understanding the power of your mindset and how it influences your actions and ultimately your results.
It's like that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. And Jack's story is a perfect example of that.
It really is. And finally, I think Jack's emphasis on curiosity and continuous learning is so important.
Absolutely. It's about staying open to new ideas, experimenting, and never being afraid to ask why or what if.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So there you have it, folks. Another deep dive in the books.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep on deep diving.